then Sally, you and Ange for the presentation of the revised budget.
Okay, so as we were sort of discussing there already, I guess the challenge that the committee and the board has been grappling with is a desire to phase the workforce plan onto the levy. And the question really is at what rate? And so for the 2022 budget, how much is going to be from the reserves and how much is going to be phased onto the levy? So back in October, when we first tabled the workforce plan, we had recommended 25%. That subsequently got up to 33% by the committee, who felt we needed to be a bit more aggressive. Further to Councillor Al-Shantiri's point, you know, maybe we want to put more onto the levy. That came to the board. There was concern about that kind of number. So we went back to committee again. We, at the staff level, looked to reduce the pressures and reassign costs amongst not just the operating reserve, but the Glencairn reserve. And so we were able to reduce the overall pressure and maintain that same envelope that we had been given by the board in October. We came back, and that's where, as Janet was indicating, having the fuller board members at the table, there was concern about could they, at their tables, council tables, defend such a significant percentage increase. I think there was general acknowledgement that in some cases the dollar increment in the scheme of things wasn't that great, but the optics around the percentage was quite significant and it was going to be very difficult. So that's where through the discussion at the last meeting, staff was given the direction, can we try to aim for something that would have the overall impact on the levy in the vicinity of 4%. And that's where the 135 came from. So if you look on page 4 of 20 of the budget document or the overall package, you'll see at the bottom of those tables that the 131,135 is the total variance year over year, and that equates to 4%. Now you can see it varies by your municipalities, and that's a function of your apportionment of the levy. So it varies because in some cases, depending on your municipality, your apportionment went up. So you're having that cumulative impact. At others, it's actually less because your proportion of the levy went down. So that is the direction that we left the last meeting with. And so you can see the impacts on each of your municipalities here on page 4. So at the end of the day, what this budget does, as I mentioned off the top, is it reduces the phase-in of year 1 to 20%. So we started at 25, went to 33, went to 63, and now we're down to 20. And I appreciate, and I'm not the one having to make this decision, but I appreciate that this is a difficult decision for you guys to make. And so we're just here at this point to listen to your discussion and allow you to decide where you think the right mix is.
All right, thanks very much, Sally. Questions and comments? Bill Sweetnam.
Yes, I've always been concerned when this year came along that we were actually doing the dam construction, that Ottawa would never bite the bullet and pay that as much money as we would be required to send a reasonable flow of clean water down the river. In fact, Ottawa's graciously stepped up to the plate and said, I haven't heard much to say we shouldn't spend as much as was in the original proposal. The real, even though the larger portion is going to the west end, that seems to be where some concern is. And I hope that those from that area can try to convince people that doing things like the Shabomika Dam and so on they're really important to the health of the watershed and the health of the West End tourists and other things that they thrive on. So I'm, I guess, I'm really proud of Ottawa for stepping up and offering to make the substantial increases. I'm disappointed that we've lost so much of the Glencairn Reserve, but I think we're being matched by good projects that require 50% funding. So I'm somewhat reconciled to that reduction because of the good results that we're getting with the results of the Glencairn, the expenditures in the Glencairn Reserve. So I think those would be my comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Are there other comments? Are there other questions?
So again, I'm starting from what we left behind the other day with the budget. So today, what's a request from us as a committee to go to, is that my understanding, to accept the new direction? Is that what you're looking for, Sally? And when you talk about page 4, there's 2 tables, table 1 and table 2. Am I mistaken here? You're on mute.
Could I just say, I think there's confusion between the page 4 of the budget and page 4 of the documentation. So I think what Sally was referring to was, I think it's page 9 of the whole shebang, but page 4 of the budget portion of it.
Yes, thank you, Phil. So in answer to your question, Councillor, staff need direction because we need to issue a budget before the end of the year to all the member municipalities, so they have the opportunity to circulate it, to review it before it comes back to the AGM. And if there are any significant concerns expressed by the member municipalities, then we also need to allow time for the Finance and Admin Committee to consider those comments. So typically we give members, municipalities, the budget by the end of December, and they're given till the end of January to provide us for comments, so that if needs be, Finance and Admin can meet that first week of February to address any concerns raised. So this is the 3rd version of this budget, and we are looking for the board to accept a recommendation of the committee next week, and that's where we are right now.
And have, again, maybe, I apologize, have you talked to obviously to the other CA within the city and talked to Steve Willis, because I know you were working with him on your budget? So can you enlighten me on this discussion?
So the conversation I had with Steve Willis after the board approved the workforce plan, I sent him an email and we corresponded on what we're looking at for 2022 increase for the city. And I also informed Francois Lurie and Ryan Polkinghorn, so the whole team there who have oversight and control over the budget for the CAs, and they acknowledged and accepted. And Steve basically said, that's fine, thank you for giving us the heads up.
And is that in line with the other CA, like the South Nation and
So the conversation I've had with both Angela at South Nation and Summer at Rideau Valley is they're aware that we did this workforce plan and it's unique to us this year, and that we would be approaching the city with an additional pressure beyond what had been set by City Council direction given to staff. And so they know that in terms of on a percentage increase, that ours would be greater, but they also recognize that we're the smallest of the 3 CAs and have, you know, a deficit that we're trying to, you know, a short gap, a shortfall in staffing that we're trying to address.
Are there other questions or are there other comments? And thank you, Andrew, for joining us. Good to see you. Jeff. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I think staff has responded well to the concerns that were expressed at the board meeting from the municipalities who, if I recall the discussion, it was who'd already passed their draft municipal budgets and had approved lower percentages than they saw coming from the MBCA. I think one indicated that they had only allowed for a 2% increase in their budget. It's still, you're still looking at 3.2 and 3.9 for those municipalities, but that's the percentage. When you look at the dollar amount, the difference between 2% and 3.9% will be about $250 at the end of the day. So I know sometimes folks get hung up on percentages in budget talks without looking at the dollars. And but I think what we have before us responded to the concerns that were expressed. We are sacrificing future contributions into the operating reserve to provide some relief on the municipal levy this year at the request of board members. So I'm satisfied with what's in front of us, with sending what's in front of us here back to the board for forwarding to the municipalities.
If I may, Madam Chair.
We're going to go to Janet and then I'll come back to you, Eli. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think I think essentially this budget does what was asked for at the meeting. But I had a note, and actually Jeff raised it as well, which is that I'm wondering if we have a timing issue that we could need to address with respect to councils passing budgets or draft budgets before we've even managed to get them our budget. And I don't know whether this has always been a problem or not. And I don't know whether we need to look at that in the future. But it was a major concern when I heard some of the members indicate that had occurred, and yet we hadn't even sent our request into those groups. So I just wanted to raise that, and I wanted to thank Ange and Sally for their hard work on version 3.
Thanks, Janet. Go ahead, Eli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think Jeff making a good point here is yeah, percentage. I've been asked before by a reporter. They saw the crime increase to 100% in West Carleton, and that's because we had 1, and the next year we had 2. So yeah, percentage sometimes scares people, to say the least. But when you put the number in perspective, seriously, I don't know. Maybe again, we spent number of hours yesterday in the city budget with big number, find it, I'm having a problem, to be honest with you, is lowering the rate artificially like you're doing right now. That's my concern more than anything else. So, okay, you did it this year. What's your solution to next year? So, and I know some of my colleagues on the call, they're going to say, well, next year is not an election year. This year is coming up. But I'm not looking at it from this perspective. I'm looking to do the right thing, because taking away the reserve, operational reserve. So if tomorrow you get a matching program by the Fed or the province, would you be able to do it if you don't have the reserve, operational reserve? Because that was the same question we got yesterday. I think, Sally, I saw you listening to the city's budget at some point, but I don't know if you stay all day, but the question is, if we have a program where it needs a matching fund, would you be able to do it?
So at this point in time, I would say, depending on the nature of the grant, I think we're topped out as an organization just generally. So, any more grants is a problem for us, more because we can't do the work associated with it. So unless that grant is coming in for the door for something we've already committed to doing, and it's just helping us offset a cost we've already committed to incurring, our problem at this point is that there's no more staff resource to do anything more. So we've reached a threshold, both in terms of at the staff level and in the operating reserve, I would say.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Phil Sweetnam.
Yeah, would it be fair to say, though, if we had more operating reserve, if a good program came along, we'd still be, then we might be able to undertake the buy, if you have to buy, isn't the right word, engage additional staff to do the appropriate work. I mean, you've done a fabulous job. When I think of the province of there were 9 programs for the whole province of Ontario, and you got 3 of them. You did really well, but it may preclude our being able to take advantage of that at future time. So I think what the real object here is to try to somewhat appease the west end of the watershed. And I guess I'd like to hear from Paul and other Bill, if they think this is a saleable one, or could we press a bit more to go towards what the original proposal, or at least towards the original proposal, if not to the original proposal. Anyway. And bearing in mind, as I say, that a large portion of what's happening, where the benefits are going, are in the west end of the watershed. And I'm so pleased that this has generally been well supported and received. So anyway, if I could, I'd like to really hear what's the voice of the west end of the watershed there. Thank you.
So I don't know, Bill King or Paul Kehoe, if you have any thoughts or any comments you wanted to share?
Not really. I don't really consider myself in the West End. I'm more or less in the middle.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's only a $600 touch to our budget, which is not bad. We don't have that great a tax base because we don't have a commercial base or anything, but $600 is livable.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. And I'm just looking, I don't know if Bill King is still with us or not. I'm just taking a look here. I think maybe we lost Bill.
He may be moving from his phone to the computer, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm not seeing him there. Janet, you have another comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make the comment that one of the reasons we're doing this is because there is potential for a significant surplus that was not discussed at the second Finance Committee meeting. And so our major concern was to not go below $600,000 in the operating reserve. And that's why we ended up allocating more into the levy. And after making some reductions as well in the budget. And then subsequently, we found that there may be a projection, or there may be a significant operating reserve surplus, or sorry, significant surplus in the budget of 2021 that could be allocated to the operating reserve. And so that raised the question in my mind as to whether we could be reducing the levy and using some more of that surplus, because we'd still be ending up well over $600,000, which seemed to be the number that we were concerned about. And then a number of municipal board members then also indicated their concerns about the percentage increase, which is an optic, and I know that the absolute dollars are not huge. I also recognize that this is not typically discussed, but my view was that given all of the attention on the operating reserve, that we should have had the information in that second Finance Committee that there was a potential for a large one. And I think that's really what we're trying to determine here, having gone back and forth on the allocation to the workforce plan, is how much we're willing to allocate from that operating reserve. And as you'll see, Ange has made projections, and I understand the numbers can go up and down a bit, but we're only asking for 135 out of the 200 she's currently projecting, which still leaves us with over $600,000 in the operating reserve, which is what we were concerned about. And so I think, putting that all together, I personally would like to be supporting this particular version of the budget because I think it addresses the concerns of board members who are not present in this meeting and spoke about having to sell a particular percentage increase to their councils. And the last thing we want is to have this budget rejected by councilors, or to have board members feeling they cannot support to their councils this budget. And so I think, I know a lot of this is optics and so on, but I think it's really important that we listen to what those board members who are not here said and address their concerns by approving what has been put before us. So thank you.
Thanks, Janet. Welcome back, Bill. I don't know if you had any comments that you wanted to add to the discussion.
No, I missed a little bit of it when I changed from my phone to the Zoom, but I did catch Janet's comments and I agree with what she said entirely.
Thanks. All right, folks. Well, if we're pleased with the third version of the draft, we do have a recommendation. It's in the package, but I wonder, Sally, if you have it and could put it on the screen just so everyone can see it. There's 5 parts to the recommendation.
Yeah, just a moment here.
When we are looking the 200,000 predicted surplus, where's that showing, Angie? Like, is it in this report? I didn't see it. I heard Janet is saying this, but I didn't see, but I mean, it's fine. If we are predicting surplus or 200 surplus, that's great, I believe. And you're only asking for 135 out of the 200.
So on page 20, page 25 of the agenda package, the reserve investments, I've added a column for proposed year-end transfers to reserves. And the 200,000 has been placed there. So it ends up being a projected December 31st, 2022 year-end balance of 718 now.
Okay. Yes.
If the surplus ends up being 200,000.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen now with the motion.
Perfect.
The one thing we didn't address is we are, because of all the discussion that's been happening around use of reserves, building of reserves, we have also included this recommendation that we set aside $10,000 from the surplus to retain professional support to help work with staff and the finance committee to address this in the new year. So if everybody can see that all right.
So if we're ready to go forward, the recommendation as is printed is that the Finance Administration Advisory Committee recommend that the Board of Directors, 1, approve the revised draft 2022 budget version 3 as presented in this report for circulation to member municipalities for comment, and 2, transfer any unspent levied capital dollars as of December 31st, 2021 to their respective capital reserves to meet future capital needs. 3, fund any operating deficit for the year ending December 31st, 2021 from the operating reserve. 4, allocate $10,000 from the year-end operating surplus to the development of policies and procedures governing the management of reserve funds. And 5, transfer any remaining year-end operating surplus to the operating reserve. Paul, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I won't support number 4. So I'll vote against the whole thing if that's what's going in there. I'd like to see that discussed further, but not put in here that we just arbitrarily allocate something because without really thinking about it. I won't support that.
Okay. Sally, is there further information you or Ange can provide to number 4?
Sure. So when we were having discussions with our auditor, Glenn Street, in the past month, one of the things that we became aware of that maybe we weren't so aware of previously is what limited work he does with municipalities. Most of his work is in the nonprofit sector. And when we were asking him certain questions, we admittedly felt like we weren't getting as complete and knowledgeable answers as we wanted and we're looking for. So our desire would be to go to another party that perhaps does more work within the municipal sector and is more familiar with the kind of benchmarks and procedures that our member municipalities are, like yourselves, are following. And you know, thinking through the type of firm that we're talking about and knowing their rates, we felt that 5,000 was probably about the minimum amount that we would be required to spend to get them to spend some time looking at our books, because we did do some call arounds and they basically led us to understand that they weren't prepared to just give advice. They would want to see what our financial position is, look at a history, look at our projected spending, and then advise on our actual financial position. So, which I think is a fair enough position to take. So we would have to pay them to do that initial kind of understanding of our situation, and then to provide that subsequent advisory work. So we felt $10,000 should cover it. Of course, if we could get it for less, we would, but we felt that was a not unreasonable budget.
Sally, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm a little hesitant on that item as well. It's sort of a new concept in a budget we've been bouncing back and forth a couple of times. I almost want to come back to that and have another discussion about it and maybe see examples of what this organization has done for other budgeting processes. Because in the end, I mean, it's a board decision what to do with that money. So, we have someone advise us, we might just not take the advice and we've wasted the money. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to go back to Paul and then Jeff.
I guess my only other point would be is that we have a wealth of clerks and treasurers in all the municipalities at the county level that do this all the time. And I just don't see that we need to go to an outside source to do this when it could be fairly simply dealt with internally. I won't support this. I just don't see it.
Jeff.
I'm just wondering if item number 4 was removed from this. I know this committee had provided a recommendation in the past that the MVCA develop a policy for the management of its reserves going forward. So that is an instruction that's gone forward and work we've told staff to do next year. If this item number 4 just wasn't in this motion at all, and that work proceeded, it would simply come out of the operating reserve anyways, would it not, if it wasn't already a budgeted item?
So we don't withdraw from reserves without the board's approval. And there's currently nothing in the 2022 budget that makes allowance for us to hire somebody to carry out and support us in that work.
Okay, thank you.
Am I correct in that, Angela, in terms of our policy?
Yes, if it's not included in the budget, it needs to be approved by the board to pull from the operating reserve. And so by coming back to the finance committee with the quotes, once we get quotes and get the proposal, I had reached out to Howard Allen's because they do a lot of the member municipalities, just to see what would be involved. We were just kicking tires to see what was involved. And I missed a call today from Howard Allen calling me back just to give us an idea of what would be involved and what questions we should be looking at to answer. And maybe it can be built in-house. It was just to look for another source, like Councillor Keogh suggested, is that for us to look outside of our normal look at other municipalities. And I know that Howard Allen's does a lot of work for a lot of the member municipalities. So it would be good information coming from their office, but it would just give us an idea of what we're looking at.
You're muted, Jeff.
Sorry, I muted myself when I thought I was unmuting. I'm comfortable with earmarking $10,000 from the surplus if it means we don't have to come back to the committee asking for, $7,000 later on to do something we've already asked you to do.
Eli?
Madam Chair, I would like to move deferral of this item number 4 for further discussion. It seems more member would like to see more discussion about it, and we can come back to it later on. So it seems it's the sticking point for everybody to support all the recommendation without number 4. Can defer it to a further discussion on the committee.
Okay. So we don't actually have a motion on the floor, so we could put the motion on without number 4. And as you say, Eli, have it brought back with further information and a more fulsome discussion.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there someone who
I would
move-
second that.
So is there?
I would second that, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. So I was looking to put the motion on the floor, the recommendation without number 4, so that we can take care of what we were here to do today. So is there a mover then for the recommendation as I had read it without number 4? So just items 1, 2, 3, and 5. So I see Phil Sweetnam's hand is up. You're moving the motion.
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. And then Paul, you'll second the motion with numbers 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
and 5. Okay. Is there any further discussion
Yes.
then? Thanks, Paul. Is there any further discussion on the motion recommending to the board actions 1, 2, 3, and 5?
Can we just ask the treasurer to keep our committee informed of the end of year reserve? Because here it says, the expectation for 200. Can Angela report to our committee how the reserve is coming up during the year, so we were not surprised by the end of the year? Is that possible as a direction instead of a motion?
Yeah, I think we can do that as direction. Thanks, Eli.
Thank you.
Good.
So any further discussion then on items 1, 2, 3, and 5?
Could I just suggest that Paul had a good idea there, and we try to solicit whatever good information we can from the clerks and treasurer at the county and wherever else. And
So
maybe-
Phil, I'm just going to stop you there because we're not dealing with number 4 just right now. We're just dealing with 1, 2, 3, and 5. So if
Okay, I was trying to speak as a thing in favor of why it was appropriate to adopt the resolution as is. But yes,
well, we have it on the floor without number 4, so we're just going to leave
Okay.
it as is for now.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Phil. So if there's no further discussion then on the recommendation with items again 1, 2, 3, and 5, I'd ask all in favor to. Oh, Eli, you have something? You're voting in favor? All right, all in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you, and that carries. So if we come back to that item number 4, Eli has suggested that we refer this back to staff to bring further information forward so that we can be looking at it in a more wholesome, fulsome way. So Eli, would you move that referral back to staff?
Yes, I would, ma'am.
Thank you. And Paul, I think you had wanted to second that. Okay, so we've got it, the referral back to staff moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on referring number 4 back to staff? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, that carries. Let me pull my agenda back up here again. Was there anything else for us to consider? I don't think, Sally? Think we're okay?
Yep, this is great.
Perfect. All right, well, thank you, everyone. I'm just looking then for an adjournment, a mover and seconded for adjournment, please. So moved by Andrew, seconded by Bill King, that we are adjourned at 3:10. All in favor? Thank you. We are adjourned. That carries. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a great afternoon.